Well, Wizards of the Coast has found another way to separate you from your hard-earned dollars. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Every Edition. I'm Jon.
I'm Jesse.
And this is our 6th episode. So
we're rolling along.
Good to be back. So for today's Loot the Body segment, we're going to be taking a look at Planar Compass, which is a zine for the Old School Essentials line, and specifically we'll be looking at the player's booklet.
And today's random encounter, we're going to be talking about how one gets a party together from DM's perspective or a player's perspective.
Excellent. Yeah, always interesting to see how different groups come together and how they get it done.
We're going to explore it all.
The tavern, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say the tavern. You all meet in the tavern.
You all meet in the tavern. Hey, there's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. And then, of course, our morale check is when we talk about news of the day for the tabletop role-playing game industry. But first up, Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been excited. I've been waiting for this since our last episode. The last episode we talked about in our Loot the Body, the Game Master's Guide to Random Encounters.
Yes.
This is the sequel, the Game Master's book of non-player characters. And in the same vein as the first book, there's a lot of rolling, a lot of randomness. Cool. There's some one-shots that you can run in the beginning of the book, and you can sort of slot them in wherever you want or play them on their own. And there's, of course, non-playable characters like, NPCs for the tavern or underdwellers that might work for the big boss.
Nice.
There's tons of good role-playing stuff in here, and of course awesome artwork, and Jeff Ashworth, the creator of this line, is doing a fantastic job.
Very cool.
How you doing, Jon?
I'm doing all right. It's I'm looking forward to the holidays. We're getting close to Christmas.
Coming up.
And
I can't
New
believe
Year's.
this year's almost over.
Yeah. I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah, no.
See you later, 2021. But there's a tradition in England of hardcover, inexpensive, high interest hardcover stocking stuffer books.
Okay.
That are called annuals. And Dungeons and Dragons is actually getting its second annual over in England. And it's an easy import, so I'm.
Did we get those?
No, well, so you could get it, you could buy it online,
Okay.
but it doesn't have the same market appeal. Like, it really is a tradition in England. People, bookstores put out these annuals. So if you're into like Minecraft, or you're into Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever you're into, especially if you're a kid, there's going to be an inexpensive hardcover book that just kind of has lots of pictures and maybe some games and crossword puzzles and stuff like that. But it is a nice hardcover. And this is the second one that Dungeons and Dragons is coming out with. So it's going to be the annual for 2022.
Okay.
There was one last year, an annual for 2021. It's still available online. So if you missed last year's, you can still get it.
I'm gonna have to try to get that.
They're just fun.
Yeah.
They're fun, especially to give to somebody who maybe is just getting into D&D, or if you have a younger player, and you want to give them some reading material.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Okay, it's time for a morale check. A morale check's where we take a look at the new and upcoming news for anything and all related to RPGs. I am incredibly excited. It is now World Ember, which is an annual, awesome sort of self-challenge that World Anvil imposes on people every year. It's a yearly challenge for writers and DMs in general. It's a World Anvil. I think I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast. But World Anvil is basically a Wikipedia of sorts that you make for your world. And they put on every year this World Ember of 30 challenges, one per day, where they're just like sort of little writing prompts to get you, in the creative juices, to try to create better things for your world. And I'm in the throes of it, trying to get my both my cyberpunk world and my D&D homebrew world going.
Cool.
This month is really where I pump out the most amount of new lore that I can throw at my players.
So World Ember is the competition.
Correct.
But World Anvil is the
website.
The website, and it helps you flesh out your homebrew world?
Yeah, so they might pose for one of the 30 prompts, you know, most of the questions are setting agnostic, so you can use it in a cyberpunk setting, or you could use it in a D&D medieval setting, or like a Western fantasy setting. So a prompt might be, what kind of treaty made two factions finally come together after warring for a long time? You know, something along those lines, where it's not like, oh, tell me about a new spell. So if your world doesn't use magic, you'd be out of luck. They're I think this is maybe the third year that they've done it,
right.
And I don't think there's been a single crossover like question or prompt. So they're really good at doing that, and it's really good for getting your creative juices going.
Cool. Well, Wizards of the Coast has found another way to separate you from your hard-earned dollars. They are teaming up with toy maker Kid Robot to release a line of D&D plush toys and vinyl blind bag figures. They are, I think, ridiculously expensive. So the plush toys are like $16, and the blind bag figures are like $17 or $18.
Oh, I think they've done that. So like similar blind bag things before. I definitely fell for that.
It's so Kid Robot makes high-end collectibles and toys and things like that. So these things are not cheap. I imagine, though, if you have a love for plush things, or a kid in your life who needs a Displacer Beast or an owlbear, stuffed.
Don't tell me that.
$17 gets you a beholder, a mimic.
I'll definitely take a beholder.
Yeah,
squishy beholder.
So they're coming out in the third quarter of 2022, but pre-orders are up on Kid Robot right now. So go ahead and pre-order your hearts out.
Well, I know what I'm doing after this,
and I will be skipping.
So slightly related on upcoming things, Wizards also put out a D&D survey. It's a survey that they do pretty much yearly. They only do it like once a year. And it's basically like your opportunity as a D&D player to get your voice heard. So they do a survey that has a ton of different questions. This is your chance to really answer them and see, what about the game you like, and tell them what you like, and what about the game you don't like, and make sure they know what you don't like. This is most likely in preparation for the next phase of D&D, 5th edition or 5.5 edition or advanced 5th, whatever the next thing's going to be in 2024. And with the next set of 3 books, this is most likely going to influence that in terms of their creative direction. So.
Yeah, we haven't talked about what we think, the next iteration of Dungeons & Dragons is going to be like, whether it's 5.5 or 6th edition, or just a continuation of 5th edition, or advanced 5th edition, a return of advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I also, I keep thinking how cool it would be to return to basic Dungeons & Dragons. So like have an advanced and a basic, and really that's, the history of the game, how it sort of blossomed in the late 70s and into the 80s. Let's go back to that, because there are a lot of players who really like crunch.
Sure.
And so who would love to see an advanced hard mode, if you will. But I just think there's also those of us who prefer a simpler game, and a basic would be a great way to introduce even more new players. So
I agree.
Well, lots of news coming from Goodman Games as well. Their 9th printing of their core book is about to come out, and they're going to have a lot of new covers. So they're going to have the blue Doug Kovac cover, but it's going to have some foil on it. They're going to have the pterodactyl cover is making a return. That's also going to have foil to distinguish it from the original. There's also going to be a wraparound cover that's not going to use the same spine motifs with the different sort of figure heads on them. It's going to just say Dungeon Crawl Classics on the side. I'm actually less even though that's the only one that's sort of like brand new. I'm less excited for that one because it doesn't match.
Yeah, it won't match.
It doesn't match the shelf. But there's also, if you were a part of the Dying Earth Kickstarter, the Dying Earth setting is coming out, and that's going to have its own unique cover that is going to follow the scheme of the heads. So that one I've already pre-ordered that as part of the Kickstarter. The most exciting news, though, I think, is actually the reissue of their soft cover core rulebook, which is a little bit cheaper. But this time around, it's actually going to include gender-neutral pronouns.
Nice.
And so it's going to make its update, that edit, is going to make its first appearance in the soft cover. It was something that they decided to do, but the hard covers were already off in printing, but they had time to incorporate it into the soft cover. I think it's a no-brainer, right? You want to do things that are going to knock down walls and invite people to feel comfortable in your game. And I would say one of the only things about Dungeon Crawl Classics that I thought was kind of didn't sit well was all the use of he.
It sort of really stood out.
It felt kind of unnecessary. So this isn't so much like great job, Goodman Games. It's just okay, thank you. Like you're catching up. Like it's not praiseworthy. It's just good, and let's keep going. Here we go, because you got a great game. You got a great game. So make it one that excites people and invites them in.
So we received an email from Tim, a regular listener to our podcast, who shares our enthusiasm for Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yes,
and things sort of zero level, and he emailed us an interesting 5th edition child class.
Yeah.
Which I looked over, and I never really heard of that, but it was sort of like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like a way to introduce zero-level character building to 5th edition.
Yeah, the child class, it's a free PDF that you can find on DriveThruRPG, and it outlines 4 or 5 levels for a character to develop as a child, right? Before they discover their adult, class, and so it is an alternate sort of version of a 0-level character creation. For
you're earning your level ups.
Yeah, you're earning. So if you've always wanted to tell that Oliver Twist story that you had, or do some adventuring as a street urchin, here's your chance. But big thanks to Tim for sending us that email and bringing it to our attention.
If you want to be like Tim, you can email us at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. You can send us any questions or concerns or comments that you have about our podcast. You can also check out our website, everyeditionrpg.com, for links to all our socials. And we're still trying to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Yes.
So definitely go check out our YouTube.
That's the big one, everybody. If you can head on over to YouTube and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Like Jesse said, we're trying to hit 100 so that we can unlock new achievements in our level.
YouTube does have achievements.
They do.
Which I thought was so strange, but it I don't know, it calls to a certain part of me that wants to get those done.
They're gamifying. So off we go. It's time for a random encounter. All right, so for today's random encounter, we're going to be talking about how you put together your party. And so thinking about this both from the perspective of a dungeon master or a game master and from a player's perspective. What is a satisfying way for your company to form? If you think about sort of the classic ways that parties are formed, you've obviously got the tavern, which we'll talk about. But if you think about the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, right,
Sure.
and the way that sort of has this natural sort of party forming around
they were
shared,
forced.
Forced and shared storytelling and shared background and basically establishing mission that bringing you all together.
Common goal.
Common goal. Lots of different ways to bring parties together. So, Jesse, I know that you've been doing a lot of DMing.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a lot of groups going right now. How many groups do you have going right now?
6.
You have 6 groups.
6. And I'm looking to add on 2 more.
Okay. So 6 groups headed towards 8. How do you bring your groups together? How do they seem to gel and click?
So I think in general as a DM, it takes a certain amount of like with anything like people skills, sort of feeling if people even care, because sometimes there's a group of people who, you know, they're there to have fun with each other and they honestly like don't care about the story that much.
Right.
They're just there to have fun with each other and roll some dice and hit some kobolds or something. But then there's definitely people who sort of thrive on that character building. So me personally, I try to, maybe it's a bad thing, I try to force people into like a middle ground.
Okay.
I definitely force some story onto people, but I definitely maybe should give some people a little bit more and be a little bit more heavy-handed when it comes to like backstory and things like that. But I think in general, having a session 0 and even a session 0.5 to sort of get everybody's expectations on what they want out of the game and be super honest with people and use that time, even if you do it randomly, to generate backgrounds. Like you could even start a level 0 like one shot or the child class stuff. You could do that and try as a DM to work that into a scenario that would make sense for your party to get together. So, you know, typically the stereotype is that everybody's in a tavern and like a bar fight breaks out and like there's going to be, you know, an innocent person's going to get murdered and the whole party just jumps in and now you're all buddies and now you're all friends. But sometimes that doesn't always work because not everybody jives together.
Right.
Like what if, you know, you've got two warring races in your party and there's a little bit of tension there and there are two factions that, you know, should be fighting, but why would they be together? You've got to try to work through that. And I think a lot of the D&D 5th edition campaign books do a good job of creating those situations for you. But a lot of maybe about 3 or 4 of them are sort of the pick it up, you're expected to be a party at this point. DM, either you create a scenario or you don't. That's up to you, which is kind of lame.
Yeah.
But at least in the Underdark, in the Out of the Abyss book, it starts you off in a scenario that I hadn't even thought of previously DMing, which is like everybody's a prisoner and you have to sort of band together and escape.
Yeah. The other sort of common way of bringing a party together besides the tavern is guarding a caravan.
Yeah.
Right? So that seems to be another trope of like bringing parties. You've all taken a job and have been hired to protect this caravan, and you know, maybe it's a important person, maybe it's some goods or something like that, but you basically you're work buddies first before you become a united adventuring party. I've found that in thinking about bringing characters together, more, you know, if you've played a lot of role-playing games, then you know if you like a beer and pretzel game or if you like a more serious game or you know, can kind of advocate for the kind of game that you want to play. But if you're new and you've never played before, I think it's helpful to have a backstory, right?
Yeah.
And I think that players that haven't had a lot of experience with role-playing games or are new to tabletop role-playing games, they want to have that help of a backstory to help them role play, to help them get into character, and so
it's a role playing game.
That's right. And so if you're playing with people without a lot of experience or new to the hobby, I would definitely encourage you to dive pretty deep into the idea of a backstory and incorporating their ideas and stuff like that, because the more help, the more scaffolding that they can have to kind of. I've seen new players really grab on to those backgrounds and really use them sometimes in really strange ways, like that don't, because they're trying stuff, right?
Trying.
They're trying things out and they're seeing they're getting their groove and figuring out how the game works and that sort of thing, and it's fun. So give them that helping hand, give them that scaffolding, and work together on that background. Answer the why question, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you want to sit down at the table and you want to say, why are we a party? Right? And have that be a collective
have them
conversation.
help with it too. The DM doesn't need to take the brunt of this.
Right.
You can discuss that during your session 0 while you're making your characters, to see what might fit with them. Would their character even be in a tavern to coalesce with the party? If you have a cleric that doesn't drink, then no. How are you going to get them in the party?
Right. Yeah. Well, I've got a really good mutton sandwich, right? One of the things that I've used in the past to bring parties together, and I've only used it once or twice, but it's been successful both times, is having everybody in the party be a member of the same family.
Okay.
And even if your characters are, they could be adopted members of the same family or what have you, or they could be blood relations, whatever, however you want to do it. But I found that instantly kind of gives people an understanding of like, oh, you're my brother, and you're the younger brother. Oh, okay, and then I know how to treat you, and like, right, and you can
some
kind of
hierarchy.
Some hierarchy and a little bit of leverage and some built-in relationships. So I would recommend give that a try sometime. If you're starting a new group. See if everybody's game for having everybody in the party be members of the same family. It really does lend itself to really quick role play.
Sure.
Like people can jump right in.
I mean, that's built into like us as people.
Yes,
so
exactly. So it's been fun.
I've been toying with the idea of so you mentioned the caravan, the work buddies.
Yes.
What if you're hired by a person for a job. Just sort of at random, so nobody really knew each other previous to this. But you are meant to go out and protect something.
Okay.
So that way, if you're up against a bad guy, you want to help protect your party members because they're going to make your job easier. So I've been toying with that, trying to figure out a cool way to introduce that. And I think that's a spin on the caravan idea that keeps it interesting.
Cool.
But yeah, there's that. There's the prisoner idea. There's the tavern idea. There's the, hey, you guys were already established by the time you met here.
Right.
Just kind of boring. One of my groups had a couple of people knew each other because one was a princess of a far off land that's off to adventure, and the person with them is a bodyguard.
Okay.
So they're sort of, they're forced into coming with, and they just sort of picked up people along the way story-wise.
Yeah. No, I mean, you said it was boring to have everybody just kind of like be ready to go, but actually that can be another way to do it, where you just drop them into the middle of the adventure, right? And then you can fill in the backstory as you go.
As you go, right? Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to establish everything at the beginning. If you want to have a game where you jump right into the adventure, kick down the door of the dungeon or what have you, and then encourage, I'd still say encourage though your players to be thinking about like, so how did you get to that point, and let's kind of feel that out and maybe come back to that at another point, because it does help with the role play, right?
Sure.
You're gonna have more of a hack and slash game if you do just kick down the door, because you've already started with a violent action, right? Like, so what do you expect?
Yeah.
Like,
So my first homebrew campaign, it basically started with a bang, where their town, the town of Steve. I'm going to keep mentioning it every episode. I'm going to try to mention
your
Steve.
homebrew world, Steve.
So the town of Steve was magically transported to this homebrew world because I'm boring and can't think of anything cooler than that. And the new party of all level ones were in the town at the time, and there's like an assault on the town as soon as it drops into the new place, and it's like nighttime, and there's bad guys everywhere, and everything's chaotic. So the party coalesces during the fight. They sort of make it to the main town, and by the end of the fight, they're all like helping each other, help the wounded and whatnot, and they've realized at that point that they work well together, and they just sort of they're basically assigned to be a party.
That sounds like a bigger version of the tavern brawl, like the chaos of a tavern brawl, but make it a whole city.
That's essentially
town. That's cool. Yeah. That's a great idea.
It was fun.
Another way to bring a party together is the random rolling, right? That comes with certain games and the way that characters are generated. So I think up until this point, Jesse, we've been talking a lot about bringing parties together where I think it's hinted at the idea that like the characters that players are playing are of their design.
Sure.
And so what about a game like Dungeon Crawl Classics, where it's totally random and you're randomly rolling the type of character that you're going to play, and so you don't have that sort of same narrative control that you do in in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, for example. So the cool thing about that is that the rolling those characters up together is part of the game, right? And I think for me, it's one of my most favorite parts of the game, because it's so much fun to roll up those 0 level characters.
Tons of dice.
And everybody's got their people. But then also that first adventure that you go through, that 0 level funnel, is it is meant to fuse your characters together, right? And to literally, it is designed via trauma. That's exactly right, right? And then so it brings everybody together, and it makes you care about a character that you might not have dreamt up, right?
Yeah. Like you get 4 characters, you might like one of them a lot, but that one might die, so you get stuck with the one that you maybe didn't like, but you learn to as the adventure goes on.
And I think that's why Dungeon Crawl Classics has been such a hit, is because people appreciate the ability that you are playing a game, right? It's not about designing an epic character or story. It's about playing a game. And so what do I have? And yeah, of course we're bound together after this adventure, because I've only got one character left. And you remember when we saw that the butcher blow up? It's that bound through trauma, I think is the right, that was the right word for that. That's kind of how the game works. And that's just another fun way to bring a party together. It's kind of like, you were talking about that town getting attacked, right? But this sort of formalizes it, systematizes it in a way that is repeatable, right? You just need another 0 level adventure. And the excuses for your 0 level characters getting together are pretty loose. Pretty loose. There's a door and that only appears every 10 years or 20 years or something, and you're ready to go. And so is 15 other people. That's the famous portal. The stairs that's in the core book. But they're loose bringing it together, because the real bringing together is about to happen. Your characters don't know each other before a 0 level adventure.
I think some of this stuff, I said previously, I've not actually played Cyberpunk Red. At least not yet. But I plan to.
Yes.
But I can sort of see as a DM, I can see the problems that I might need to face, and getting a party together seems to be one of the easiest, but also one of the most difficult. So in Cyberpunk, you have fixers, which are basically like your quest givers.
Okay.
They're the people who hire you, and if they have a certain job where they need a certain amount of people, they hire that many people. But those kinds of campaigns aren't meant to last. So you're together. You might not like working together, but you like making money. So you're going to work together for this one mission. That one mission might take you, 3 months worth of sessions. What happens after that? You break up. Or there's a bigger, better mission, but why would you do it together? So I think you might have to plan that out a little bit ahead, and try to be a little bit more creative. And that's what I'm trying to do, sort of on the back end, just figure out.
Maybe similar to the family idea. Maybe it would make sense for you to start off as a gang, right? Or a thieves organization,
have some sort of tie there,
or hacking organization. Yeah, some kind of organized crime background or something like that has already brought you together, and start from there, and then kind of fill in how did you join the gang and all that kind of stuff as you go.
I think most of these ideas can be setting agnostic, but I think all games and all settings that are role playing have these difficulties where you can be the sort of quote unquote boring one, or you can try to be a little bit more creative, but it's just difficult with different settings and different games.
Absolutely. All right, well, let us know what you think. How do you bring a party together? How do you like your games to start? Do you want to start at the doorway of adventure? Do you want to already have a complicated backstory and relationships already established? Or do you want to have a clean slate and just have that barroom brawl? Let us know at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. Send us a note. You can also check out all of our socials at everyeditionrpg.com. Links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon, where we're keeping a journal of our process and what we're doing and thinking about as we're making the podcast.
If I ever figure out how exactly I can make getting a team of cyberpunk people together, I'll post it on the Patreon.
Excellent. All right, it's time to loot the body. Today's Loot the Body is Planar Compass. So Planar Compass is a zine that has had 2 issues and a player booklet that has come out so far. It is for the Old School Essentials game, which is a reintroduction of the basic and expert Dungeons & Dragons rules. And so it is a wonderfully rules-light, simple game. Old School Essentials is highly recommended by us.
We've definitely talked about it.
Yeah. But Planar Compass is maybe one of the best zines that's out for Old School Essentials. And that's saying a lot because there's actually a lot of good zines out there for Old School Essentials. But basically what Planar Compass is taking Spelljammer and marrying it with Planescape.
Oh, okay.
All right. So it is a multiverse. It is about traversing the planes, but doing it in a Spelljammery kind of way. And the first issue of Planar Compass outlines a place called Dreamhaven, which effectively, if you're familiar with Planescape, is very similar to Sigil, which is the city that connects all the planes. Well, Dreamhaven is the city that is at the center of the multiverse. Okay, and there's a couple different sort of adventure starters in there where you can bring a party together or explore Dreamhaven. It also then gives you sort of the basic idea of how you travel the astral sea. It's not the same as Spelljammer.
Sure.
So it has a different physics, system of physics and stuff. You're traveling on what's called the Astral Sea or the Sea of Souls.
Spooky.
Which is, kind of spooky, dark waters of psychic energy. And there are psychic storms. And this campaign world for Old School Essentials emphasizes psionic powers. And so it introduces psionic powers to the basic and expert game, to the Old School Essentials game. So that's also pretty exciting. The player's booklet is out now, and it is half of issue 1, and just the player-facing part of issue 1. So if you're a game master, you want to pick up issue 1 to run adventures. But if you're a player, you don't want to get issue 1 because it'll spoil everything. But you do want to pick up this player booklet because it's got different classes that you can play, and it's got the psionic powers in it. The first issue is levels 1 through 3. So it's the basic. And issue 2 is 4th level on up, so it is the expert version of Planar Compass. And I kind of like the way that they separated those two. So it is
sort of cleanly.
Yep. Basic and expert. The second issue, I just got it. I haven't had a chance to read it completely yet, but it does give more information about the multiverse. And the most exciting thing that I saw in issue 2 was that Dalemwood, which is the world of Old School Essentials that's created by Gavin Norman. That Dalemwood is one of the planes that you can visit in Planar Compass. So that's exciting, and I know that Dalemwood campaign book is going to be, and Player's Guide and Monster Manual are going to be coming out soon for Old School Essentials. I'm chomping at the bit for that Kickstarter to get started. But apparently, Planar Compass has Dalemwood by name as part of its multiverse.
That's pretty good.
So there you go. It's exciting.
All right, this has been Every Edition, the Tabletop RPG talk show. Remember to check out our socials over on our website, everyeditionrpg.com, and send us an email at everyeditionrpg@gmail.com. And also check out the YouTube.
Yes.
Remember to subscribe on YouTube. We're still trying to hit 100 subscribers. And let us know in the comments what our dragon should be named, because it still needs a name other than Dragon McDragonface.
I kind of like Dragon McDragonface. I think that's probably fine.
Well, thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of your favorite podcast places, I'm Jesse.
I'm Jon.
Have a good night.
Thanks.